public comment cards, so we'll move right on to C, approval of summary actions from April 25th, 2018. Any comments?
Move to adopt as presented.
There's a move,
Second.
and it is seconded by, and I can't see the names, and I've forgotten everybody's names, so you got to help me out here.
Chadwick seconds.
Okay, that's good enough for me. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So moved. The second one for actions from June 27th, 2018. Comments?
Move to approve.
Move to approve.
J.P. McDermott.
J.P. McDermott. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Him. Mark Roberts. I'm sorry.
Your vice chair.
My vice chair. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Carried. Now we come to the good part. Election of chair and vice chair. Do we have any nominations for chair?
Mark Roberts, I nominate.
I will be stepping down from the board in February, so I respectfully decline.
Any more? Come on, you guys.
Maybe.
You know I'm going to be elected, so. I mean for city council, not this.
Clarified that.
No, I'm not going to be chair for life. Thank you very much.
I nominate Yolanda.
In absentia.
Maybe it's a dirty trick.
Ooh, that's a rule.
Any seconds? I second that nomination. Well, we have one nomination. Come on, we got to have someone else. We need to move it around a bit. Okay. I guess it's Yolanda and I. I'm not sure how we do this.
So who's the nominee? You're the chair?
I'm the current chair. Yolanda is a nominee.
Okay, so the nomination period is over.
Damn.
Close the nomination.
I was hoping for a 10-day period.
What's that?
I was hoping for a 10-day period. I could at least call her up and tell her to please take this, but okay. Nomination's closed. All those in favor of Yolanda?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Yeah.
That'll teach her.
That'll teach her. She is now the chair. Let's go for vice chair. Any nominations? I nominate you.
Oh. But you don't know my name.
I don't care.
Larry.
Larry Wyrick.
Second.
I second.
It has been seconded by two people. Any other nominations? Man, you guys, come on. Well, you're it. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Yeah. You're now it. And I'll stand. You want to take over?
Oh, it drops on me, doesn't it?
We'll do it. Okay. All right. Next order of business. General business. CAC attendance log. Please take a look at that. Make sure it's right. Looks good to me. And we have our meeting calendar. No meeting for November. Why is that?
We normally meet in early December.
Yeah, we generally have a joint November-December meeting on
Okay.
the second Wednesday in December. So that's, I think, the 12th this year.
Cool.
So we're not trying to.
I just wanted to see you get up and move to the mic.
So we're not trying to meet the day before
Right,
Thanksgiving, right?
yeah. Major discussion items. Review of the City of Pittsburgh calendar year 2016-17 Growth Management Program Compliance Checklist.
There's a familiar face.
Yay!
Thank you, committee members. My name is Paul Reinders. I'm the traffic engineer for City of Pittsburgh, and I completed this checklist. Our last checklist, our growth management checklist, we've had a lot of development occurring, including work on the James Dolan extension. We've completed the EIR, and we're now beginning our final design as well as utility relocations. There's a Kinder Morgan petroleum pipeline that we're relocating, as well as PG&E overhead transmission towers. That's underway. Yes.
That pipeline, what is that pipeline?
Kinder Morgan,
Yeah, what is that? Gas?
high pressure oil, some kind of petroleum product.
Okay.
Thank you. So anyway, the James Dolan, which we're in final design. It's a $73 million project, and we're using our regional fee and finance authority dollars up to 67% of the project will be funded through our regional fee and finance authority, as well as our local traffic mitigation fee, which is only 2% funded, funding this project. James Dolan extends James Dolan in the foothills of Pittsburgh to connect with Kirker Pass Road, relieving a lot of congestion on Buchanan Road, thereby actually reducing greenhouse gases from all the cars that are idling on Buchanan Road. And it's a non-growth roadway. There won't be any development occurring along this extension. And then we also have our BART extension through Pittsburgh. We have a Pittsburgh Center Station that was being constructed during this period. It's now finished and it's operating in 2018. We also constructed a kiss and ride lot next to it to help with the drop-off and pickup of BART passengers. The BART parking lot is a few hundred feet away from the station, and that parking lot actually has not filled. It's very close to capacity as of today. We counted 255 occupied stalls in the parking lot. Actually has a capacity of 262 vehicles, so it's very close to capacity. It's slowly been building up over time since it opened earlier this year. And with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to our planning manager, Kristen Pollitt, who is here to talk about other development in Pittsburgh.
Oh, thank you. Hi, so I'm Kristen Pollitt. I'm the planning manager in Pittsburgh. This is actually the first time I've been to one of these meetings, so nice to meet you all. So just to kind of give you a quick overview of some actions, I guess, that have occurred during the 2016-17 reporting period. We've approved a couple of residential projects during that time that are pretty significant. One of them was the Tuscany Meadows residential subdivision. It included 917 single-family homes on the the southeast corner of the city, basically on the border of Antioch. So that was a pretty big one. We also had two other ones worth noting, the Bell Harbor subdivision, which is actually within the Railroad Avenue specific plan area. So this is a little bit more of a denser project, and it's within walking distance of the new BART station. And then we also had an apartment project that was approved on the western side of town, which is a little bit closer to the old, or the existing, what do we call it, the Pittsburgh Bay Point BART station, let's call it that. That was for another 318 apartment units. So in addition to residential development that's been approved, we also had some commercial projects that are noteworthy. You may have noticed we have a new Sonic restaurant that has recently opened. It's been pretty popular, so it's a success story that we've got. We also had some new entitlements issued for it's a Delta Gateway, we call it Pad 12 building, but it's basically in the Century Plaza Shopping Center, also kind of close to the border of Antioch. That project is built out now, and we've got a Panera and a Mod Pizza, and I think there's one or two other retail spaces there. So kind of some exciting things happening in Pittsburgh. During this time frame, it's also good to note that we actually did not have any general plan amendments during 2016-17. However, I should point out that our current general plan has a horizon year of 2020, so we're getting a little close to that, and we've actually begun the process of trying to get a consultant on board to do a comprehensive update to our general plan. This is going to be a really big project. We're excited about it at the staff level. Updating your general plan is a big deal, so that will be kicking off in the next year or so. What else? Only other thing, or I guess maybe the last thing worth mentioning is that with the opening of the new BART station, we have been starting to see a little bit more interest in development around the station and under the specific plan. We've got a deal that's kind of starting to come together with regards to the office site that's immediately adjacent to the BART station. We're now looking at a combination of office and hotel for that site. We had a DA amendment request that actually went to our Planning Commission last night on that item. And then we also recently approved it's a small building, but it's an infill project at the opposite corner, and it's basically a two-story retail/office building. So exciting things happening in the area. I think that's probably all I have to say for now, but I'm definitely available if you have any questions on these items. So thank you.
Any questions? I have a couple. I'm just curious about the affordable housing. Where are you at with the regional housing needs assessment on affordable housing?
Yeah, I did not mention that. So we are, I think we're about 3 years into our 8-year cycle. We have almost completed the entire requirement for low-income units. So we are just about at the limits for that. We still have a ways to go with our very low income. We're required to provide 392 units. We've only got about 23 that have been done so far.
Are those high density or apartment buildings?
Typically they would be. So for very low income, they're probably going to be the denser units.
Right.
You're probably not going to see that in a single family home. We've also made considerable progress on the above moderate income. This is kind of an interesting category because of all the categories. This is one that increased pretty significantly for the city for this reporting period. So of the 1,063 units we're supposed to construct, we've already got, I think, over 700. So I think those are the two categories we're doing really good with right now.
On the single family homes, I would expect low income for first time home buyers. What is the general average size of those homes? Do you know?
Are you referring specifically to units that would be restricted for low income, or just on average?
On
in
average.
The city? We are seeing sizes anywhere maybe like 1,700 square feet up to about 2,800 square feet. They kind of are falling in that range for single family.
Nothing smaller like 1,200 square feet?
Some of the denser projects have gone down to maybe like 1,500, but for new homes, I really haven't seen anything smaller than that.
And the other question is on for your very low and low income housing, do you have any data on how many of those buildings or units are occupied now?
I don't think, well, okay, so the ones that are being reported for this cycle are pretty much still under construction, so they're not occupied yet. Yeah, so I don't really have any further information on that.
One last question.
Yeah.
About what percentage of your population leaves Pittsburgh first thing in the morning?
a large percentage, I would say.
Yeah.
I think our jobs housing balance is almost like a 2 to 1. I don't know what the number is, but it's a significant population that is commuting out.
And have you heard of the
Yeah.
Contra Costa County Affordable Housing Bond Act 2020? Are you guys participating in that?
I'm actually not familiar with it.
Okay.
I can add one thing, though, that I think maybe is worth mentioning related to affordable housing. We have been doing something pretty innovative in our city where we've been requiring new development projects to incorporate a certain number of accessory dwelling units with the with single-family homes.
Yeah, we've done that as well, yeah.
Yeah, it's actually been pretty popular. We've been seeing developers providing more units than what we've been requesting, which is kind of neat. We also have had success in having developers restrict income levels for rental of those units. It's kind of an interesting thing because we can't really require them to rent out those units because if it's attached to their home and they want to use it for family, they can. But if they do decide to rent the unit, then we have a restriction recorded on the property that limits the income for the rental people.
How expensive is that to do for the owner? I mean, do they have a lot of fiery hoops they have to jump through?
Like I said, we're having new subdivisions are doing this, so it's really no effort for the homeowner
good.
because they're buying a house that already has the unit incorporated.
And
So-
last and final question. For your project labor agreements, are your contractors paid prevailing wages and their subcontractors as well? Or are they getting minimum wage for the subcontractors?
I'm not sure. I think where there are agreements in place, I know that they are getting prevailing wages, but I don't know that all projects have those agreements in place. So,
I have a question, Kristen.
yeah.
I'm very interested in your ADUs. Can you tell me what the cost is to put one on your property in Pittsburgh? For example, Oakley, if I'm correct, to put an ADU on your property is about $12,000.
In
To-
fees?
To put one on my property in Byron in the county is $32,000. So are you in those ranges somewhere?
Yeah, if you were a single-family homeowner, you're already a homeowner, and you wanted to add an ADU to your property, the fees are a little on the higher end. They're probably closer to the $30,000 as it states right now. However, we do have policies in our housing element that talk about finding ways to reduce those fees so that we can incentivize homeowners to construct more of these units. So it's on our to-do list, basically to look into that and see what we can do to start issuing more waivers. It does get a little bit complicated because a lot of those fees are passed through from other agencies. I think the sewer district has their fee and school district.
Yeah. There is a crisis in Contra Costa County for seniors to find affordable housing. There is, and the ADU is being very encouraged, but the fees are
Prohibitive.
way out there. So-
Yeah. It's definitely on our radar as something that we're looking at trying to address.
Great, thank you.
I can actually jump in there too, because it seems like, Central Sand's only $1,500 for their ADU fee. The city of Pleasant Hill is, I think, about $3,000, having gone through this process 6 months ago. The city of Concord did their waiver program, I think, a year and a half ago, and waived fees almost entirely. So given that the ADUs count towards your RHNA targets for low income, and I think even very low income, it seems like it would definitely behoove the city to be encouraging homeowners at their expense to be meeting your requirements for you.
Yeah, historically, a lot of homeowners have made those conversions but not legalized them because they don't want to pay the fees. So we want to get away from that, and we want to encourage them to do it the proper way. I would say thank you for sharing those examples so we can kind of look to those cities and find out, what we might be able to copy. But yeah, thank you.
Actually, it was cheaper for me to subdivide my property and make a lot than it is to put an ADU on my property.
Any more comments?
So are you actually requiring developers to hit a certain percentage for ADUs, like on that 900 unit development? Or is it like you guys can hit this certain target or contribute to a housing fund sort of deal?
So we have an existing inclusionary housing ordinance that provides pretty clear direction as to what developers should do to address affordable housing. The options listed are in there are not very popular, and they don't have a very good track record of being successful. So to kind of come up with a different solution, what we've been doing is requiring development agreements, and as part of that negotiation, we have the ability to kind of do something different with regards to affordable housing requirements. So we've been requiring a percentage that mirrors the inclusionary housing ordinance requirements. So it's generally 10 to 15% of the development should have ADUs.
And are you doing the deed restriction for 30-day minimum rental periods up front, or only if the homeowner that eventually buys from the developer comes to you?
Actually, we don't have a deed restriction for rental periods. We have a deed restriction that is required for occupancy. So basically, you cannot you can't rent out both units separately. One of them has to be owner occupied, and then we have a deed restriction that's only required on that 10 or 15% for the affordability component. If the developer chooses to do more than what we've requested, those additional units don't have to have a rental restriction, income restriction.
And do you think the developer is declaring this to the homeowners when they're picking out their new house on the map in their office of which one will have an ADU, of whether an individual unit will have that income restriction for them or not?
I don't know how they're marketing it.
I mean, if
But
you look
they're-
at backing out the value of one of those units to a potential homeowner, that's like a $200,000 net present value. But if it's got an income restriction on it, they could lose $60,000 or $70,000 of that up front without knowing it.
I would imagine that the income restriction would probably make it a little cheaper to buy it. So maybe that is what makes it affordable for some people. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Any further questions? Is the Pittsburgh representative? That's you. I thought it might be you. Do we have a motion?
Well, if there are no further questions for our representatives from Pittsburgh, I'd like to move that this body accept the growth management checklist for 2016-17.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? It's carried. Yay. Oh, Randy, you are up. Tell us something good.
My name is Randy Wasaki, I'm the Executive Director of the Contra Costa
Transportation Authority. And first of all, I'd like to thank all of you for your volunteerism and participating in the Citizens Advisory Committee. I know sometimes it's not always that fun, but we really need your service, so thank you very much for that. I was asked tonight to talk a little bit about our innovation program at the Contra Costa Transportation Authority. But before I do that, I just want to say that we are going to set up, and Matt, I'm going to pre-announce that Matt's going to tell you that we're going to work on a date for all of you to go out to Gomentum Station to see the self-driving vehicles being tested. And hopefully it's on a day, and we're going to try to set it up where you'll get to see the technology and sit in it and kind of take a look at how it operates and the advances. And so that day's coming very shortly, but I don't want to steal any of Matt's thunder, so just pretend when he gets here that you didn't hear that from me. So you know who we are. We're a congestion management agency. That's why we're we're testing these vehicles is not because it's a bright, shiny object that is pretty cool. We're really trying to find ways of fighting congestion here in Contra Costa County because we're worried it's driving businesses out of the Bay Area. We're also the sales tax authority for Contra Costa County, so we deliver a multi-billion-dollar program of a suite of projects and programs for the county. There are 24 counties in California that use sales tax to fund transportation. It's the most prolific way of raising revenue to build and fund transportation infrastructure and programs in California. There's a lot of money on a yearly basis that are invested over the year. I don't think it's $194 billion, but that's through 2050? Through 2050, so you've got $194 billion. LA County just recently passed a half-cent extension forever and another half-cent, so 1 penny forever. The first 40 years, it generates $120 billion. To put that in perspective, we tried to pass a measure in 2016, Measure X. It was a half-cent sales tax for 30 years. That was just a shade under $3 billion. And so we have a population of about 1.1 million people. They have a population of 14 million people. It's a big difference, but they have a lot of needs in that county, and so do we. I'm very proud of our financial situation, our stewardship here at the authority. We're AA+ rated by Wall Street, by Fitch Rating Services, and Standard & Poor's. We have had clean audits at least every year that I've been here. In the last 6 years, we've had the Excellence in Government Finance and Reporting by the Government Finance Officers Association. That's a very prestigious award. And I'm not saying this, but we've had a continuous increase in sales tax revenue since I got here. So when I got here in 2010, it was 61 million. Today it's around 95 million. So it's been a steady arc, hopefully upwards, and it'll continue beyond my stay here. We're a lean organization of 20 people, and we've paid off our PERS pension. So we're one of the few public agencies that I know of that we don't have a pension liability. And so that was the teams came back from a conference, and we get about, and I think JP would understand this, we get about 35 basis points, about 0.35% when we invest it in LIBOR and in the normal kinds of places that we do our investments because they're very, very safe. But we sent $2.2 million over to CalPERS, and we get about 6.8%. So that's a big difference on your money. And so we take those monies that we make and we reinvest them in projects and programs for all of you here. In our last bond sale, we saved about $10.8 million over 16 years. And so we do everything we can to try to save money and invest it in projects and programs. These are the things we do. I'm proud of the fact that we've reestablished ferry service between Richmond and San Francisco. We have $45 million in Measure J to fund ferry service between Hercules and Richmond. But MTC's requirement is a 40% fare box return, and the only ferry service that meets that, based on a model, is Richmond to San Francisco. So what we're trying to do now is we're trying to do a private ferry service. We're in discussions with Tideline, and they want to try a peak hour morning, peak hour evening, a concierge ferry service between Antioch and Martinez. Apparently there are people that work in the city for the county that live in Antioch, and so imagine we can get 40 passengers on the morning boat, run 3 trips. That's 120 vehicles off State Route 4, and we've got to figure out a first and last mile issue between the ferry stop in Martinez and the county building. But if you're willing to walk, that might be a better option for you. So we're looking at running a 6-month pilot there. So we're excited about that. We're also focusing on, it's not on any of these slides, and I'll just say it, we're looking at trying to extend Sand Creek because there's a high accident rate on Deer Valley, and so we want to kind of punch that Sand Creek through and make it attached to Deer Valley and try to take some of that pressure off of that road. And so we're working on that as well. So why do we go to Wall Street to sell bonds? It's because we're bringing the money forward, and we advance construction, and it's a lot cheaper to build projects today than it will be in 25 years. And so we're doing everything we can to accelerate construction here in Contra Costa County. The other piece is we can talk about projects all we want, but the real benefit, assuming it's the right project, the benefit is when you build it or when you fund the program. So we're excited about this. Sorry, this slide doesn't look quite right. It looked funny to me when it was on the slide, but I was told that it was a, what do you call it?
It's supposed to be an animation.
Yeah, an animation. That's okay. Accelerated delivery. So these are our keys to success here at the authority. We get projects ready to go. It's hard for us to sell the concept of advanced funding design, going to the state of California or the federal government and say, hey, we've got a project, a concept, can you please fund the planning and the design? The easiest strategy is, hey, we've got a project ready to go to put Californians to work. And so we've been very, very successful in leveraging other people's money because the projects are ready to go to construction. It's a lot easier to sell that. And then we finance projects, as I mentioned before, to take advantage of the bidder's climate. Today, what's happening is we're having escalation. So we recently advertised the 680 HOV lane southbound. We got a $5 million savings. The engineer's estimate was close to $70 million. The project came in at $65 million. So we got a $5 million savings in an escalating environment. We're not so, that was 680 HOV southbound. And we awarded that contract to Bay City Paving, and they're getting ready to go to work. And so we're going to hold a groundbreaking at the toll plaza there at the bridge. And then the 684 Phase 3, that is the worst choke point in Contra Costa County that's left, the 684. So Phase 3 widens the interchange, State Route 4 through that interchange, replaces Grayson Creek Bridge. It's too low. We're going to raise that up, and we're going to widen several other bridges. That project was estimated at $80.132 million, and it came in at about 85. We have a protest, bidder's protest, so we're working through that. And hopefully we'll get to advertise that or award that project pretty soon. And then I think that, Fifi and Matt are here. We have great staff, and we select, at least in the 8 years that I've been here, we select for success. And so the things that I can't teach are things like entrepreneurship, risk-taking. Those are very hard traits to teach somebody. But if you find people like that, you can do a lot of magical things with a team. So we only have 20 people, so the staff is very, very important. And then we don't all the time argue with our funding sources, our partners, because we got to go to them and ask for money. And so we really try to make great partners out of our funding partnerships. And then we leverage somebody else's money. That's our secret sauce. So Measure J, without a measure, it's very difficult to leverage other people's money, but that's what we do here at the authority. So we have the same promises made, promises kept. So when we tell you we're going to deliver something, we're going to deliver that project. Fourth bore? There it is. So that project was a $420 million budget, and we delivered it for $416 million. And without Measure J, this project, we'd still be talking about the fourth bore, but that eliminated a lot of congestion. Highway 4, we finished that project. We have a savings on that. That was 5 construction packages. The total value between the BART extension and Highway 4 is about $1 billion. And if you add the bypass, it's about $1.3 billion. Those projects have a savings. We delivered those projects early, and so we're excited about that. We're very proud of that. A reporter asked me, Randy, how much time do you save? I say, we save about 15 minutes in the AM peak and the PM peak. This is with the rising population out in East County, because they are building homes, as we mentioned before, and people live in those homes, and they commute to other places to go to work. And so 15 minutes, and she said, that's not very long, 15 minutes. I said, 15 minutes in the morning, this is not 15 minutes at 1 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the morning. This is 15 minutes you can spend with your children in the morning and the evening. That's a half an hour a day, 5 days a week, every working day. And now some of that savings has been eroded because they're building houses out there. But the point is you can move a lot of people with a well-planned out construction program. So I mentioned Sand Creek. Sand Creek came in under budget. We're excited about that project. We actually built 2 bridges. We were only supposed to build 1, but we took some savings, and then we took some money off of Balfour, moved it forward, got a better bid, got a better price on that second structure. And so that was in the top 10 in the accident area, number of accidents in the city of Brentwood for 10 years straight. There hasn't been an accident there since. We grade separated the movements. 164, the last one, 164, the project that should be up. So that was a $50 million allocation of Bay Area toll money. And we brought that project, we finished it at 49.7 or 49.3 million. So we gave MTC a check back for $700,000. That's where you have to make a U-turn coming off of Antioch, the bridge, in order to get to Brentwood, or go through Oakley. Nothing against Oakley, but either U-turn or run through Oakley. So now you have a direct connector right into the city of Brentwood. BART extension, this far exceeds the planning and the modeling. People are left standing on the platform. It's well received. And so what we're trying to do is figure out a way of cobbling together some of the savings on State Route 4 and some of the dollars that we have in Measure J to finish that parking lot. There's a parking issue there. They cannot park there, and they want access. The next thing that we're going to look at is trying to fund another set of cars, so a train set, which means an engine, 2 cars, times 2. So that's because people are left on the platform. And so we want to provide more opportunities for them to take BART and transfer. I-80 Central Avenue is an operational improvement project. They have a Costco out in Central Avenue, and everybody on the weekend tries to jam their way onto Interstate 80. It causes a weaving problem, and that's what causes congestion and accidents on 80 as they weave across. That's what causes congestion, that move. And so what we did there is we restrict on Interstate 80 using ITS, Intelligent Transportation System, signals. So we limited that. People still want to jam their way onto 80, but we put up a barrier so they can't. The congestion is gone on the weekends. There's no congestion at this location. It's done exactly what we said it would do. But the other piece that we noticed, and I actually gave a speech to the Rotary Club, they said, Randy, that pavement is in bad shape. And what happened is it's underneath the Interstate 80, so it's an argument between who maintains that. Does the state maintain it or does the city maintain it? Well, that's not getting the road fixed. And so what we did is we went to the city of Richmond, Mayor Tom Butt, and City Manager Bill Lindsay, and said, we have a contractor there, we can get a bid price, let's fix that pavement. The other thing that we did there is we added access ramps for wheelchairs onto the sidewalk, but a portion of the sidewalk was broken up. So why would we allow people to get on there in a wheelchair if you can't pass it? And it's not passable. So we ended up working with our contractor, and for a little over $800,000, we paved that road. It's in brand new condition. All the striping is brand new. The access to the Bay Trail using Central Avenue is restored, and the sidewalk is fixed if you need to use that and you have a wheelchair. So it's not just the big State Route 4 projects for $1.3 billion, but it's also very small projects that we pay close attention to make sure they meet the criteria that the public expects. San Pablo Dam Road interchange, this is phase 1. Phase 2 will fix the whole interchange. We're getting this interchange ready to be widened, so we move the pedestrian overhead away from the interchange. And instead of dropping it on this side of Amador and having the kids cross Amador Street through that signal, we've extended that pedestrian overhead down into the school. So now the kids don't have to cross a busy street, Amador. They can go directly into that school. And so we think it's a lot safer. Once again, I think that's exactly what the moms and dads, they don't want their kids crossing the street, neither do we. But we want them to go to school, feel safe about it, and so the pedestrian overhead is done. Balfour Road interchange, I have my fingers crossed. I hope it's going to be completed this year. It depends on weather. If it gets too cold, that final lift that you put of asphalt concrete can't go down when it's too cold. You won't get compaction. It'll ravel off and you'll be yelling at me. So what we want to do is if the contractor can finish the project this year, then we're going to do everything we can to finish it. Otherwise, we'll leave it down about an inch, a tenth of a foot, and then we'll come in next year, early next year, March, April, when it heats up again. It's going to be open-grade asphalt rubber, and the idea is to make it quiet. Once again, for the people that complain about noise, we're going to do everything we can to make this interchange as quiet as possible. So future investments, phase 3, it's in a bidder's protest. Hopefully it's resolved by this in October at our board meeting, and we can award that contract, and we'll get that much-needed improvement under construction, because the interchange is not designed to handle that kind of volume of traffic. This project is awarded to Bay City Paving, and they'll go to work here very shortly. So it'll extend the HOV lane all the way from the bridge to Rudgear, and it'll be an express lane. So if you're a single occupant vehicle, you have a switchable transponder. You can access that if you're late or you want to go somewhere very quickly, you can access that. If you don't want to, you can just stay in the mixed flow lanes. We have a State Route 4 op, so as nice as that project is operating, coming over the hill, you have weaving. And so we're going to try to do some operational improvements to fix the flow of traffic on State Route 4. So when the bypass was built, the bicycle trail, the pedestrian trail was bifurcated by the freeway. And so we made a commitment, this is before my time, by the way, somebody else made the commitment, I'm just following through, but they made a commitment to continue that trail. And so we think we have enough money to build that project. We're just going through finishing the design now, and then we'll advertise that project. And you'll have a completed trail out there in East County that can cross over State Route 4. And then TriLink. So there's a funding package that I'm going to talk about in the next slide, but this is the idea of, and I was told not to use the term cul-de-sac. So in East County, you go from a freeway down to 2-lane roads where you can take Byron or you can take Basco. They're not designed to handle 60, 70,000 vehicles per day. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to fix that. And there's also a connector that's very important, at least from an economic perspective, in getting traffic out of Byron, and that's the airport connector. It's a connector that goes by the airport that connects Basco Road and Byron Highway. So on a priority basis, we think we have the money to get that project going, and it's about $100 million. And the reason why it's that expensive is because you're going to build interchanges at both the Byron and Basco. Why do you want to do that now? Because it's going to be twice as much if you don't do it now when you get back to it, if you ever get back to it. So you might as well build it right. And so this is the recently passed Regional Measure 3. That's the $3 toll increase. These are the projects and the monies that we have available to Contra Costa County. And so the 684 interchange, we're going to fund phase 1 and 2. That's about $210 million. And I know you can read this as well as I can. But in here, you've got the Byron Highway, Vasco Road connector. So that'll get us through environmental, hopefully, partway into design, if not all the way through design. So we'll get ready to go with that project. And then Vasco Road safety improvements. The county has phase 2. They just couldn't find the money. It's designed. And so there's the money for that project. And then out in East County, they have an intermodal station that they want to, we're looking at trying to extend BART, whether it's e-BART extension, a bus rapid transit. We want, because of the success and the people wanting to take another mode of transportation rather than a car down State Route 4, we need to find a way of extending the transit system all the way out to Marsh Creek. And so we're looking at trying to get some money to start the planning process there. Senate Bill 1 generates somewhere around $5 billion, $5.2 billion. It depends on how much gas is used and those kinds of things. The cities in Contra Costa County get about $32 million a year. That's based on population and lane mile formulas. And we compete for other monies. And so there's money available in Senate Bill 1 for Contra Costa County. So having talked about all those roadway projects, we know we can't outbuild our way out of congestion. It's literally impossible. You're just not going to do it. By the time you widen 680 in 25 years, the minute you open it, the population, you have potential people clogging the lane again. So we're not only looking at fixing our hot spots like 684 or the on-ramp, off-ramp combinations like Lawrence. We call that hotspot cooling. We're trying to braid those ramps to make sure we separate the traffic out. We have a multi-pronged approach at trying to solve the congestion problem here in Contra Costa County. We think autonomous vehicles will be a big help. They're safer. They refuse to crash. They have 360, and you'll see this hopefully when you're out looking at Gomentum Station, but they refuse to crash if the technology is right. So the fatality rate will go down. There'll be less congestion. Why is that? Most of the congestion, half of the congestion in California is non-recurrent, meaning things like accidents, rainstorms, weather events, that World Series, hopefully, A's maybe, they'll cause congestion. Those are non-recurrent events. A majority of that non-recurrent events is accidents. It's just unpredictable, and we have too many. So we have less congestion, better air quality, electric motor, in our case, battery power. So we're looking at an RFP to go out to help us figure out what is not only this generation of charging technology, but the next generation of charging technology. We don't want to go out and throw up a number of charging stations if we don't need that in the future. It won't make us look very, very smart, and it's not a good use of our resources. And we think that this is the only technology on the planet today that can help us get to the underserved parts of our communities. The people that are old like me, I can't walk as far as fast. People that are handicapped, disabled, and also the people that choose not to own a car or can't afford a car. We think this technology has a golden opportunity. It has a come-get-me on-demand service, door-to-door service. And as the cost of transportation gets lower, you may question the need to own a car in the future. And that's what we're really banking on. So the Safer Roads piece, this is National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, NHTSA. They ran a study about 94% of the cause of accidents, human error. People ask me all the time, well, what happens if the autonomous vehicle software is not 100% perfect? So what happens to DMV when they issue a driver's license, yet 94% of the cause of accidents is human error? We make mistakes, but we hold a computer to a higher standard. And so we have to figure that out. In 2016, about 38,000 people died on our roadways in the United States. 2017, my understanding is closer to 40. We're going in the wrong direction. We should be driving that fatality rate down. I mentioned accessibility. I think this is one of the few technologies that will help us bridge that gap. We're changing the way we plan the future. So our long-range plans dictate our capital improvement program. And so we're actually changing the way we plan the future. We're actually adding the technology, modeling the impacts of the technology, trying to figure out how do we deal with transportation network companies like Lyft and Uber. How many of you have used Lyft and Uber? So they double park. So in your communities, they double park, they pick you up, and are the people behind Uber and Lyft liking your situation, or are they giving you some other gesture? They're upset. So how do we then modify our cities in our county and the built environment to accommodate the new technology, long-range planning? So we're changing the way we plan the future to make sure we make the right investments in the future. So we've gone out and we've used new technology. I mentioned this before. We use Facebook. We use a different website. We inverted a telephone town hall. And we got more comments this cycle of our update than the previous 25 years combined. And what we heard is, you don't like potholes. It's a no-brainer, but you don't like potholes. Number two is you don't like those red lights at night, at midnight. Why are you picking on me when I'm leaving the CAC meeting and there's a red light and there's nobody else around? You don't like it. So we're trying to adapt our signals. You want a better BART, but you also want a first and last mile solution, and that's why we scoured the earth and went to Europe. We had a contest called City Mobile, and they looked at a first and last mile problem. We contacted a professor at the University of Rome who said the Easy Mile shuttle at that time was the most advanced technology on the planet, and so we secured 4. So we have 3 in California, 1 at LAFTA in the Livermore-Amador Valley Transit Authority. They're running a pilot in Dublin, and the 2 that we have in San Ramon. So on the area of urban planning in your cities, think about this. The 68 major metropolitan areas in the United States, 1 from each of the 50 states plus 18 more, 3% of their long-range plans had the impacts of Lyft and Uber in those long-range plans. 6% even considered the impacts of autonomous vehicles. That's a National League of Cities study. And so we have to do better to make sure that we embed the newer technologies and the future technology into those long-range plans, because they're going to have an effect on our investments in the future. And we also modeled greenhouse gas reduction, and we came up with a 58% zero-emission fleet turnover by the year 2040 and a slight reduction in VMT, vehicle miles traveled, 15% reduction per capita, and we can glide into that 80% reduction by the year 2050. So that prompted us to go out and said we're going to have to support that technology. Now, some are not happy that we didn't include hydrogen in this study, but we received an allocation of $200,000, and it was very specific on what we could study. And so we're going out with this on phase 1. If we need to study fuel cell hydrogen technology, we will do that on phase 2. The question is, do you ever need to widen a roadway or a highway in the future? That's just a question. We want to use the shoulders, so we're trying a pilot to use the outside shoulders on Interstate 680 for buses. When the traffic drops below 35 miles an hour, the buses get on that outside shoulder and they stay on in time. So then your excuse of those buses are really unreliable, it goes away. So you have another option rather than your single occupant car. And complete streets. And so this goes to the refurbishing or remodeling the built environment. If you go in and you set it up so that you can accommodate the technology, your streets operate better than they do when everybody's double parking and trying to catch Uber and Lyft. And so we're trying to make sure, and we had 4 pilot projects in Measure Exit that didn't pass in November of 2016, and we want to continue that effort. So you'll go out to Gomentum, or Matt will tell you that you're going to be going out to Gomentum Station. It's a fifth the size of San Francisco. You all know where it is. It's that way in Concord. It's got old roads, old bridges, old tunnels. It's not flat, so it's got curvilinear alignment. It's got profile change. In my opinion, it's 40 miles away from Silicon Valley. So they don't have to drive their cars out to the Castle Air Force Base in Merced or these other places. They can drive 40 miles, or they can leave them here in Concord, and which Honda does, and then test them on a daily basis. So we started to create smart jobs in Contra Costa County. I mentioned efficient mobility, cars refusing to crash, enhanced safety, they refuse to crash those vehicles. And then it's going to be a healthier environment, electric motor. We're one of 10 test beds designated by the United States Department of Transportation as authorized proving grounds for autonomous vehicle testing. And we've signed a number of agreements with other countries. So we're trying to make sure that the data that they gather, we get access to, and the data that we generate, they get access to as well. So we're sharing information. You'll see this when you go out, but it's got old roads, and you want these vehicles tested in the worst-case scenario, not the best. So if you're building a new test bed, everything looks brand new, but that's not indicative of the conditions of the roadway and bridges in California and the United States. They're average, or maybe even below average. Tunnels, was rumored in Michigan that California, we didn't have tunnels. That's not true. We have two twin-bore, 1,400-foot long, 14-foot diameter steel arch bridges, or tunnels, and we have bridges. They're old bridges. Vehicles have to pass under bridges in the future. Smart parking, skid testing. So these are our partners out at Gomentum Station, the major ones. Toyota Research recently signed. We signed Lyft. Uber has re-upped. They're not testing trucks anymore. I think they're going to test a van. They just signed an agreement with Toyota to get access to some Sienna vans, so they're looking at that. Sumitomo Electric, first-year supplier. Baidu is an artificial intelligence. They're an internet company based out of China. They're on the third generation of Apollo. And then Toyota Research is also doing an analysis of AI. AAA has recently taken over the Gomentum Station, the nonprofit status, and has agreed to invest $50 million into Gomentum Station. So we're excited about that investment. And the idea is to build the infrastructure to attract more partners once that facility is turned over to the city. And then Easy Mile, that's the technology of choice for our shared autonomous vehicle, and Lyft and Uber trying to take the driver out of the equation. So a little bit about our shared autonomous vehicle. So we've celebrated a lot of firsts in this effort. So we got brought the first SAV, level 4 vehicle, to North America. We got the first piece of legislation in the United States exempting us from a steering wheel, a brake pedal, and an operator, AB 1592. Assemblymember Susan Bonilla authored that bill, and the governor signed it. And then we received the first, actually the only 2 licenses in California to operate a level 4 vehicle on public streets. So this is the vehicle, and it was never, by the way, it was never about being first. It was always about being safest. And so we tested this vehicle in our control environment at Gomentum Station, starting in November of 2016. And we moved it to the parking lots at San Ramon. Why is that important? San Ramon has the least amount of parking per worker. Why? Because they fund express buses coming in from the BART stations. They circulate around the business park, and then they head back. But when they head back, they're empty. So imagine if those were full. That's 50 to 80 cars per bus less on the streets of San Ramon in the morning and likewise in the evening. That's a lot of congestion relief. We don't need to move everybody out of their single occupant vehicle. At the Olympics in 1994 in Los Angeles, the goal is 10% mode shift. That's our goal today, 10% mode shift. If we can get 10% of the people in another mode of transportation, you're going to see a lot better operating freeway system in the Bay Area. And then we launched on public roads. We're the second, to be honest. Las Vegas was first. But we're the only one on public streets currently that haven't been hit by a truck, so we're lucky. Well, this was stuck at a parking, and then the truck was pinned it in, and it didn't see it, and it hit it. And so 2 hours after the first inaugural ride with the mayor, they got hit. So in California, I worked for the state for a while, and I can tell you that the pendulum probably would have swung to no more. So we're very, very cautious, knock on wood, and we have good luck. Complement to transit, we're not trying to take over the bus service. We're trying to add riders to that bus service. We're trying to make that bus service more reliable, more attractive, and get some people that want to take a bus, that the bus drops them off in the vicinity of their work, use it. It's going to be on time in the future. That's the idea. We're not trying to take over transit. So it's complementary to transit. And then these are our partners. BART, they're worried about parking. Parking is, those structures are very expensive. If you're going to build a parking structure, make sure that the floor height is a little bit more so you can put a false ceiling in, get your ducting in, because you may have to refurbish those parking structures in the future. Best Mile is a route optimization software. The City of Concord has been a great partner all along. Bishop Ranch is the funding partner for those two vehicles. Easy Mile is the technology. AMG is our strategic consultant. Bay Area Air Quality Management District wants to clean the air. And First Transit, if you contract out your bus service in Oakley, which I think it is contracted out, First Transit will bid that work. How to prepare for the future. I think we do these sessions a lot all over the United States. We talk about what we've learned, education outreach. We're telling folks, if you haven't, you should think about changing your planning process because you may be working on the wrong projects. And by the time you get ready to build them, they may not be needed, and that's not going to be a good thing. We engage in this issue. We want flexibility in the regulatory environment because regulations can actually stifle innovation. We want to leverage the technology. We want to have consistency in striping and signing so you don't confuse the vehicles in the future. And we love collaboration and partnerships here. And we're thinking about going out with another measure. That's the board decision. We're having discussions with that. And so if that happens, there'll be some revenue, hopefully, to advance some of this technology into a real time so that people can start using that technology. So I'm sorry if it was so long. I apologize, but we had a lot to cover, and I'm willing and able to hopefully answer any of your questions that you have.
I have a question.
Sure.
The State Road 4 bypass, going east is wonderful, except it doesn't have any signage anymore. If you want to go to Stockton, where do you go? How do you get there? There's no signage left anymore.
So which direction are you headed? Are you heading, which connector? Are you heading on
I'm talking
State Route
about
4 towards Stockton?
going on Highway 4,
Heading
and you want to go east? To Stockton.
So you have a guide sign up over the structure that says Stockton, right? So it's back. So you coming from Pittsburgh, you can see the Stockton split. So it's the guide signs are set up so that you know which flyover. You take the flyover to Stockton, or you go under to go to Stockton. You take the flyover to go to Sacramento or Rio Vista. Do you want more signing? We'll look at it.
I guess
Let
I'm
me just
getting
say this.
too old to observe properly.
Okay. All right.
I've missed that.
So let me do that. We'll look at that, and we'll see if we can sign it better for you because you're a customer. So we're going to figure this out. But we have put up a number of City of Oakley signs, I can tell you that, along State Route 4.
Love it.
The road diets and complete streets thing are pretty interesting. Would you say that the education's still coming along? Because I saw that I think City of Pleasant Hill is going to start a road diet, and everyone is so up in arms about it. But I mean, I've done the research, I've read about it. It seems like it's a really good use of funds, especially when you're doing complete streets, trying to get people into other forms of mobility, and that really adding lanes doesn't increase flow. The corollary being taking away lanes doesn't necessarily decrease flow. What is the county seeing?
The best example I can give you is for a complete street road diet project is actually in Pleasant Hill, City of Walnut Creek. And it's so you have Treat here, and it changes names to Geary. So as you go across, the idea is the complete streets are great opportunities when you have a housing development and you have a transit center. Because what the complaint was is the sidewalks aren't well lit and they're not wide enough to have pedestrian and bicycle traffic. So the cities work together and they reduce that 4-lane arterial to 2 lanes. They fix the bridge. They put wonderful lighting. The sidewalks are wider, and we haven't had any complaints. So that's a great option, or take people out there and take a look at that in Pleasant Hill. And the only difference is Pleasant Hill's standard for streetlights is one thing. The city of Walnut Creek is another. So the thing for me as a transportation person, I can see it. I see the difference in street light. I'm going, why is that? But that's just different standards. But that's a great example of housing development and a transit hub. So why don't we entice people to ride their bicycles? They do it all over Europe. They ride their bicycles here. We provide them with lockers or storage facilities. And so I think it's working. And so that's a great opportunity. And that's why we try to fund 4 other pilot projects, because we're going to help fund those endeavors if they're the right project. It doesn't work everywhere, but this is a great example.
Can we get that on Oak when the new library parcels develop with condos?
Yeah, I mean, we can work with you on that. That's what Matt will model that for you, and if you let us know exactly where you want it to go from the library down to the transit facility, they work great. And I know it's not intuitive. It goes against the kind of the common thought is you're going to narrow the road and you're going to cause more traffic, but that's not the result there. JP, how are you? Good.
Just a question on the 680 Express Lane. How's it going, and what are the measures of success for that? I mean, I was waiting for it and waiting to notice some changes. Honestly, driving it every day, the changes seem to be there's an accident at least once a day or between El Pintado and Livorno. And I'm just wondering, how do they measure success of the express lane?
So it's throughput. And what's happened is it's like Interstate 80 with a smart corridor. So when the ribbon was cut and the instrumentation was turned on and everything was working, in the meantime, the population is, what is the unemployment here? Less than 4%? 4 billion people or something are working, some weird number, a lot of jobs. So even during the uptick in the economy where more people drive to work versus when you have a recession and fewer people are driving to work, your freeways operate great during that time, right? 2009, 2008 were great because people are unemployed. But now people are working. Even with that added pressure on that system, you're moving more traffic through those corridors, 80 and 680. What you're seeing is people are weaving in and out. So weaving is an issue. So when we extend the HOV lane southbound, we've actually barrier separated certain areas so that it avoids that weave next to another on. So when you come on, people have a tendency to get on the freeway and then they go all the way across. So the idea in the future is to incentivize people not to go all the way across the freeway, but come in a different way and then access that HOV lane and get in and stay in it a long time. You're going to get smoother flow. And that's the idea. And then when we build the interchange, we want direct connectors from HOV to HOV, so you don't have to do that weaving.
So in Southern California, a lot of the carpool lanes and HOV lanes do have, you can't come in and out, right? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
That they'll be doing more like that?
Yeah, so LA, it's a matter of survival. So they adopted barrier striping. So you cannot weave across, right? And they have breaks to Disneyland, they have breaks to LAX, but that's it. And so people get used to that. Here, it's continuous access, so they're used to just weaving in and out. And you see a lot of that. Every time traffic weaves, you create congestion. And we're trying to at least minimize that weaving action by making the right investments. And it was not popular when we initially brought it up about barrier striping and restricting some weaving, but models like what Matt does shows that you're going to get more. It's going to save you time in the long run. It's kind of like ramp metering. A lot of people don't like ramp metering, but the overall trip is shorter, and the accident rate is less because you're holding the delay at the ramp and you're metering traffic on in an orderly fashion, but people just don't like it. But once again, every ramp in Los Angeles, they're metered.
I've got a question for you. Who's building the Easy Mile? And is it being built here?
It's being built in France. Vigier Motors is the manufacturer. They almost build those by hand, and they have to be imported. And you have to go through NHTSA for every single one of those vehicles and go through a checklist process to bring everyone in. So we brought in 3.
So you're saying that likelihood of building it here is pretty slim at this point?
I'm not saying that. We actually have talked to a company that has a micro manufacturing plant. You would know about this. It's 3D printing.
Yeah.
And so we've offered them the ability to test at Gomentum Station if they bring an additive manufacturing plant to Contra Costa County. So we're trying to use the test bed to bring in technology so that our people get access to these industrial or, industrial engineering or microengineering, or whatever you call it. This company we had a discussion with them the other day about why it would be great for them to come to Contra Costa County. We've got a lot of 10-acre plots here. We've got a lot of smart people that want to work. They don't want to drive to Silicon Valley if they don't have to. And so let's create some jobs here.
Are they these Easy Mile buses? I haven't seen them yet. Are they required to have attendants on board?
Yes, so in the negotiations to get AB 1592 signed, we agreed to have an attendant because it made sense. And so First Transit they operate those vehicles, and we have an attendant. I don't think it would have been wise to run a pilot where there's nobody on it, even though the vehicle can drive itself. You still need, something happens, or somebody's concerned, and they don't know how to stop the vehicle. You want somebody there, and so we've agreed to have an attendant.
Are they union folks, or are they private, or what?
They're private. So right now, so that's a great question. So let me maybe answer it in a different way. So we actually have the pilot at San Ramon is funded by the owner of Bishop Ranch, the business park, and it's being operated and overseen by us. So it's a private-public partnership, if you will. So because of that, in order to run the vehicles on public streets, we had to go through the California Public Utility Commission's jitney service protocol. So we had to get the city of San Ramon to agree and pass a resolution it was okay to run that jitney service in San Ramon. And so now we're moving outside of our county and we're going down to Dublin. And we helped with our lobbyists to get that AB 1444 passed by Baker, Assemblymember Baker, to run a pilot in Dublin, which had to be approved by NHTSA because we imported that third vehicle into the United States. LAVTA and County Connection are overseeing that pilot project within the city of Dublin because they are a transit operator and they want to know, is this going to fit into their operations in the future? No jitney service is required because they're a transit operator. So in that case, it's a public-private, not a private-public. And so we're trying to find what is the right business model to support these vehicles in the future.
I have a funding question.
Sure.
And a great component of the funding is gas tax. And with all of our electronic vehicles coming on, how do we recoup their fair share of the resources?
It's a great question. So there's a couple options. One, the California Transportation Commission recently finished what they call a road user charge or vehicle miles traveled study. And they had 5,000 volunteers that paid for the usage of the road based on their mileage, much like you can get insurance for the day. So you don't, by the way, your car is parked 94% of the time, but you pay insurance on it 100% of the time. So there's some usage, that's a usage tax. The other option, which is in Senate Bill 1, is they're going to add some dollars to your registration fee to try to compensate for that lack of paying their fair share, so to speak, of gas tax, excise tax on gasoline.
Correct me if I'm wrong, too, but SB 1 actually penalizes EV drivers. The amount of extra fees that they pay, they'd have to be getting like 8 miles per gallon and paying a pretty hefty gas amount for it to actually even out. So that's how it will be covered. But they're also heavier.
Much heavier. It's a battery pack. But cars don't cause the damage. It's the trucks.
I have a funny kind of off question, but I do a lot of traveling along the off roads instead of hitting Highway 4 and Highway, I'll do the frontage road all the way down. I'll get on it at Stonehenge, ride it all the way down the valley that way, or on Highway 680. I do much better when I get off the freeway and ride that frontage road over to the entrance of the bridge, to cross the Martinez Bridge. It's quicker. And some of my little side roads need some terrible attention, like the road between Concord and Pittsburgh. And I don't know where to go to get it moved on that little road, Bailey Road. I don't know if you're familiar with Bailey, but it goes over the hill to 4.
Yeah, I know where it is.
And it's in terrible shape.
Is that in Pittsburgh?
It's halfway Pittsburgh and halfway Concord.
Mostly unincorporated.
So it's a county. So it's a county.
Blame the county.
But this illustrates a great point. Most people don't know who owns the road. They just drive on the road.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to time to complain, who do you complain to?
Who do I get?
Right. So if you want Bailey Road, the condition of Bailey Road is not right.
Yeah.
It's not good enough. It's potholy, it's cracked, it causes damage to your car.
Yeah.
Then you need to let us know, and we'll tell the county that you need to put that up in the order of paving.
Okay.
So is it Bailey Road you want us to look at?
Yes.
Okay.
It's from Clayton Road over the hill and comes down to the Pittsburgh BART station.
Okay. We get a lot of phone calls, by the way, complaining about how we divert traffic onto your streets where you live. That's not us, really. That's Waze. Waze is finding the little pockets of time savings for you, and they'll run you down an alley, or they'll run right in front of your house, and I received at least 10 calls on why are you diverting traffic down our roads, and I send them to Pittsburgh and tell them that's their fault.
I'm really excited to see the airport connector being talked about at every meeting. This is wonderful. Our traffic from the airport, from the bypass to Marsh Creek Road to Discovery Bay is impacted from 3:30 in the afternoon till 5:30. You can't go over 35 miles an hour. I'm hoping that we're not too late to put this airport connector. I hope it's not, as sometimes it looks like it's obsolete by the time we get it done. I was just wondering when we will see something happening.
Assuming, so our RM3, Regional Measure 3, is being challenged in the courts. And if it's overturned, then it's going to be a while before you see any action out there. If it's not overturned, then what we're going to start doing is once we get the allocation starting June or January 1st of next year, we'll get the money and we'll make an application to start the planning. So you have to do a project study report to figure out what it is that you're going to, what's the scope, what's the cost, and what's the schedule, and how much it's going to cost to do all the design, the environmental clearance. And then if we have enough money, we'll do the environmental clearance and hopefully the design. And once again, back to the slide about our secret to success, is once the project's ready to go to construction, it's easier to ask for money when the project's ready to go to construction than it is to say, hey, can you give me $1 million to do a study? Because we have our hand out all the time. And our hat's out, and we're trying to get money for all these projects. We also try to swap money. So if we can find a way of taking some dollars off of an ongoing construction project, let's say, and swap it with some federal money and bring our sales tax money off, that's another, then you make a pitch, you make a request to our board or to Transplan in your case to consider using some of those savings to help accelerate the delivery of your project, the airport connector. But it's a priority. We talk about it because it's the highest priority of the Tri-Link, that whole area back there. That's the priority, is trying to get that airport connector built and then do something and use that airport to its fullest capabilities. The other thing I would say is you're experiencing a good thing. Even though there's more traffic, there's more people working. So the economy is, the congestion is a barometer of your economy. When the congestion is up, people are working. When the congestion is down, a lot of times you look and it's a recession. So
why is this in court?
Because it's an issue between tax and a fee, and is it 50% or is it so? In order for us to pass the sales tax measure, we need we need a supermajority, 67%, and the RM3 only needed 50% plus one.
Oh, okay.
Didn't it
And so
pass
that's-
by like over 60 something? It was pretty high to begin with, wasn't it?
But it wasn't it wasn't supermajority.
It was really close, I remember.
Not to a. So Contra Costa, about 45% of the voters supported. It was over 50. And we get blamed that we didn't support it. Well, we got 45%, and that's all we needed because we got over 50%.
more questions?
Okay, so let me, can I wrap this up? So I owe you a Stockton sign inventory. Make sure that it's adequately, and if it's not, we'll work with Caltrans to make sure it is. And then you want Bailey Road paved, or at
I
least
would
take
love
care
to
of.
see Bailey Road paved
Between Clayton to Pittsburgh,
between Concord and Pittsburgh.
Concord and Pittsburgh, okay. Anything else?
Yes, if we are requesting.
Yeah.
Camino Diablo from Vasco to Highway 4 that goes right straight through Byron really needs, not the road so much, but the shoulders. It's horrible.
So are the shoulders paved?
No.
So it's dirt?
Gravel.
Yeah, so the problem is that the drop-off between?
Yes.
Ah, okay, so they need to back the shoulders.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you. I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Well, Matt, are you up?
I think so. Thank you again, Randy. So we have a couple of staff comments tonight. Did you need to go? So first of all, I'll touch on the Gomentum tour. I'll just mention the reason why we've been promising you that tour all this time, but we've been going through some legal issues with our attorney and Brown Act issues. And if you were on the EBART tour, you remember we had to actually call an official meeting of the committee. And then if members of the public wanted to come, we had to accommodate them. Luckily, we only had a spouse show up, and that was easy. So we didn't want to have to accommodate the general public out at Gomentum Station because it's really tough to get in and out of there. But because it's not a Measure J project, our attorney decided that it wasn't under your purview. So it does not fall under the Brown Act. So we are able to just take you out there casually as not a part of an official meeting. So Fifi is going to reach out to you, give you some dates. It may be easier if we offer 2 times, maybe one in the morning, one in the afternoon, depending on your work schedule. And it's easier if we have fewer cars out there because we have to do kind of a caravan. And it's easier if we have 4 to 5 cars at a time and not 10 cars at a time. What we do is we drive out there. We meet at Concord City Hall over on Parkside, which is about a mile or so from the entrance. And then we all head over, get checked in, and then start our tour and hit all the hot spots. It's really great. It's great just to be out there because it's beautiful and there's wildlife and all kinds of stuff going on out there. But then just to see the technology is really cool. So we'll be setting that up over the next few weeks. We don't have any dates picked out yet, but we'll throw some out for you. So it will happen. But thanks for your patience on that. Another item we have is our new chair. She's not here tonight, and there's a reason for that. She emailed us after the agenda went out, and she was changing a light bulb in her house, and she was pretty badly electrocuted, and then further injured in the fall. So she's got some stuff going on. So we picked up a card for her, and we thought it'd be nice if we could have everyone sign it. Maybe not everybody knows Yolanda because she hasn't been here in a few meetings, but she's been on the committee for several years and really loves this group. And so we thought we'd send her a card and let her know we're thinking about her. And maybe in the card we could also let her know that she's chair. Get well soon because you got a job to do. So I think that's it for our staff comments. So I'll turn the mic back over to you, Chair.
Well, do we have any committee reports? I don't believe we've started a projects and administration committee or planning committee or authority board meeting.
I have my usual report on the authority board meetings.
There you
That's
go.
part of the handout. I don't think I'm going to make any comments on that. Randy has covered so much in his presentation tonight. But I'm covered the last two authority board meetings that took place before this meeting. So I'm open to any questions.
Has anybody read it yet? No.
I might make a couple of comments. I think our finance people, again, did a sterling job with the bond placement. That was rather major. They cut down our exposure to variable rates by 50%. And I think backed us out of, halfway out of a interest rate swap agreement. And I believe also saved some money on the refunding. So that's, again, the finance team here at the authority has pulled it off rather well in placing bonds. This was triggered by the Federal Tax Revision Act that was going to ramp up our costs by some of the provisions. That was why the authority had to get going on refunding the bonds to avoid that issue.
Any other comments? Any staff comments? CAC member comments?
Fifi, anything we need to worry about with the parking? Or just
If you need parking validation, see me after the meeting.
thank you.
Correspondence, news clippings, anything interesting for your little neck of the woods?
I could make one statement. In a private conversation with Joel Keller, they are scrambling to try to increase the parking at the Hillcrest station. And I'm glad to see the work being done by Pittsburgh for the Railroad Avenue station. But there's also some preliminary discussions going on with Brentwood. He would love to see Brentwood get in another 1,000 parking spaces at what will eventually be the location of the McQualamy station. So that would be, he says, I remember he said their surveys indicate that a lot of the traffic for EBART that boards at Hillcrest comes from Brentwood. So if this takes place, it would be roughly in the area where the bike overcrossing is being built between Sand Creek and Lone Tree.
And I have a question for you guys. Oakley Road goes all the way out. It ends somewhere near the cemetery, but it's very close to that new BART station. Is there any way we can get that connected to the BART access road?
Calling back, Randy.
Redirect.
So if you're talking about the road that goes on the other side of the Makoko line, and then you get, so there's talk about bringing a bridge over the Makoko line and then running it, and part of the deal would be to create more parking on this side of the BART parking Hillcrest. The other piece that we did when we funded the parking is BART originally wanted to buy a portion of the parking land because another portion, we call it the bird bath, it's low. And so so we bought the whole parcel because you wouldn't sell as a half a parcel and then keep the lousy part for yourself. It's just not going to happen.
No.
So we ended up buying the whole property. So that's the piece that's going to add more parking. And then we're looking at on the other side of the track, the rail, we're trying to, one of the deals may be the developer comes in, brings a road in, and then gives up X amount of land for more parking spaces. That's being discussed now. And that would be an opener for Oakley, because
Yeah,
the circulation would be much better. So that is being looked at.
And it would enhance the Easy Mile.
Yeah, so you can run an Easy Mile shuttle down that road to get your people into there, and you wouldn't need more parking. Exactly.
I say this somewhat jokingly, but maybe not. Given how full Antioch BART is at Hillcrest, how long until they decide to put a garage there and some housing and extra stalls?
Yeah, and they're also looking at off parking. So Tri-Delta Transit owns land for 2 park and ride lots, and they could run shuttles in. They're also having discussions where there's a Kmart somewhere off of 160, and yes, and then there's another. There's a
160
mall
in Main Street.
Yeah, and there's a mall off of.
And that Kmart has been closed.
But the parking lot's still there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the malls, in the old days, the malls didn't want us. When I worked for Caltrans, we tried to go to malls and say, can you give us this outer fringe of parking for a park and ride lot? Oh, no, we need all our parking. Well, because of Amazon and these other technologies that are available, a lot of people aren't shopping anymore. They're not walking through the malls. They're just ordering on, they hit a button, and then this package comes miraculously on their doorstep, and they have their goods. So now they're looking at, it's the Macy's. There's a Macy's there off of State Route 4 where they're looking at some kind of shuttle service potentially between that parking lot as an overflow lot too. But they ran out of parking. But the issue is if you don't get there by 6:30, you're out of parking, so you have only one choice to drive. So let's find a different technology that keeps you from having to drive in the first place, and you're going to save a lot of money because those structures, if you go up, they're expensive because they're built like bridges.
Yeah, I'm envisioning an iPhone app that I just press a button and something comes by, picks me up, and takes me where I need to go.
So we are working on and this isn't part of the presentation, but I'll go ahead and tell you that we're working on what we call mobility as a service. It's a platform, and Bart's working on this. It's an on-demand, so you get to choose what your train schedule, your bus schedule, and it routes all this off for you off of one platform. What that MOS program, or Mobility on Demand or Mobility as a Service, does, it requires us to aggregate all this disparate pieces of information, the bus schedule, the BART schedule, the Uber schedule, this schedule, and all of it comes into one platform, and you get to choose your mode of transportation. And it works great in Europe. If you ever go to Finland, that's all they use. That and bicycling. You can get bike share on there, electric bikes, that's in the future as well, electric scooters potentially to get you to that BART station. I wouldn't use it, of course, because I'm getting too old, but if I was younger, I'd do it. Skateboard in with electric skateboard. But you see a lot of people using that technology. So things are changing. We're just trying to figure out how to leverage that technology off of one platform, because nobody can go to every location and try to find schedules. We want you to go to one location and then figure it out. We'll provide more detail in my next update.
Oh, yeah.
I'll give you one little update on St. Anne's Village. We are planning to break ground at the end of this year. I have seen the plans. It's beautiful. There are 2-story and 3-story buildings being built. The apartments are from a studio up to a 2-bedroom apartment. And the senior center is going to have a public restaurant, and we will be having John Muir Clinic Center. Everything that you need for your health facilities will all be there too. So we're getting ready.
I'm just going to ask Matt or Randy or any other community rep who might have some information. One of the big things in Orinda right now is an effort by the folks who live on private roads to ask that funding that has been allocated for repaving of roads be applied to private roads as well as public roads. And this is a real bone of contention, a very challenging issue for the Public Works and Engineering staff and the City Council. And I'm just wondering, we can do this offline, but if anybody has any thoughts on how to deal with that, because I think a lot of folks think that would be a gift of public funds if you work on private roads, but the private road group is very.
Well, they could do.
Yeah. Well, believe me, Arenda didn't incorporate till '85, and a lot of the roads were in bad shape then. And so the city did not want to, take responsibility for them at that time, and they sure don't want to do it now, because a heck of a lot of them are cul-de-sacs anyway.
They'd end up having to have some kind of agreement, or maybe be included on the lighting and landscape district, and then start having to pay a yearly fee.
Lighting in Arenda, there's very little of that, believe me. So I just asked about that because what's also interesting, these folks seem to forget the fact that to get to their private street, they do drive on the public roads, for which the funds are intended. So again, this really, I just wanted to bring that up. If anybody had any, any thoughts, that would be appreciated, because that really is a bone of contention right now. Thank you.
They're going to have to pay no matter what. Yeah.
If anyone has questions, I know it's come up a couple of meetings now, but if anyone's considering an additional or accessory dwelling unit, I'm wrapping one up in like the next 2 weeks. So I've been through the whole process, the pitfalls, the costs, everything, if anyone is considering it.
I would be, and I haven't got all the information, but I'm always interested in how the city can reduce the cost and incentivize doing that. And it's always nice to know what the process is. It'll be different from city to city, but...
To be honest, Pleasant Hill was like 3 weeks for the permit, and that included, I was missing information. I had to have an engineer come out. It was really quick. I think it's like 3% of declared project cost. So when you go to fill out your permit for what you think it's going to be, it's like 3 or 3.2. And if it's under 500 square feet, I think there's no school district fees. So mine was like $470 for a one bed. And Central Sand's only $1,500 for their hookup fee. They're incredibly reasonable.
Wow, this is almost a first. It's only 7:30 and we're just about done. Any future agenda items? Anybody interested in?
We can have someone come in from ABAG or a city even to talk about ADUs, things like that, if that's something you guys are interested in. Presentation.
Ooh, that would be good.
Them come to our planning directors before. I'll add it to the list.
Can we get somebody, and I can't imagine who it would be, who would be expert or proficient in understanding how population movement is occurring and why. I want to say gentrification, but I don't think that's the right word. I mean, we have, in Oakley alone, and I know the rest of the cities are like that out in Far East, 2/3 of our population is leaving town every morning. And we're trying to figure out how to get a handle on the problems with affordable housing and enough housing for everybody. And we have people moving from far west Bay Area and South Bay out into Far East County. And it's creating a big traffic problem and a housing market problem. So if you could find somebody who knows what's going on there and give us some kind of presentation.
You're referring to commuting, not moving, right?
Commuting, moving, finding affordable housing, the whole works.
I have a possibility, too. I believe I've seen somewhere in the press that they're looking at a next-generation clipper technology. Might be good to hear how that's going.
Anything else? Nothing but crickets. They're taking a break. Nothing more to add, anybody? It has been moved by Mr. Wyrick that we adjourn the meeting a little early, but that's good. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions?
Stays here.
Anyone want to stay? We are adjourned.
You've been out there? Yeah, that's a good example. Oak Park. Oh, yeah, you're talking about over there going to the Nibbler or whatever, the restaurant out there.
Yeah, there's Black Angus, there's a bridge.
Yeah, I know exactly where it is.
Going across that with the bike right now. It'd be great.
Thank you. Thank you for checking.
Okay.
Okay.
So you ride your bike across that structure?
Yeah, but I'll get